Men need help, but it's often very hard to get men to the point of admitting they need help. For this reason, it is a brave and bold thing indeed to publish a book about manhood, because one of the first things you hear, I know this from experience from many publishers, is this: men don't read books. And in particular, men often don't want to read books about being a godly man. But the lived reality of all of us men out here is that we do need help. And so I am so excited for today's podcast. Those of you who listen to Grace and Truth know that I cover manhood on a regular basis, very happily so. It's really the central matter of our age, I would argue. So many problems trace back to failures of manhood. My guest today on Grace and Truth is a man named Jim Ramos. I'm guessing some of you out there know him. He's the director, the head of Men in the Arena, his ministry that is aimed at helping men grow in godliness. He's written a great new book called Dialed In. He's got an excellent podcast. We could just keep the accolades coming. Jim, welcome to Grace and Truth.
Owen, it's such an honor to be on your show. I'm always humbled to get asked to be on different shows, and yours is crushing it. So great job, and thank you so much. I'm honored.
That's so kind of you, Jim. I think I first saw your material on Instagram, just scrolling who knows what. And this video popped up of this dude looking rugged, walking through the forest, talking about like, here's what I'm pretty sure was the first video I saw of yours. I've watched a lot of your content and benefited from it. You were like, it was something to the effect of, hey guys, you've messed up your life. Your marriage isn't in a great spot. Sexual purity is not perfect. How do you get back? Here are some ways you can get back. And Jim, just quickly say this. That grabbed me because I engage manhood content all the time, Christian and secular alike. But a lot of the Christian content out there is aimed at the ideal. It's aimed at be a man. You know, the typical men's conference is going to be a man, don't jack up your marriage, work hard, kill it for Jesus. And there's a degree of that I love.
Yeah.
But you talk about that angle, of course, the ideal, but you also talk about the real when guys have not lived out their life perfectly, as none of us does. Why do you have that focus, Jim?
Well, because I am not the hero and the rock star of Men in the Arena. I am simply a guide. I'm kind of a Lord of the Rings nerd. I'm like the Gandalf leading you through to Mordor type of thing. So I've been through the enemy. The enemy to us is not Sauron. It's this thing called the stress bubble. You know, guys about 25 to 55, they get married, they have kids. They're living in this time of intense stress and pressure, but that's what's going to make them or break them down the road. And so what I do is I go back into the stress bubble and I tell these guys, okay, here's where I failed. Here's where I screwed up. Here's what I learned. So I'm teaching these guys life lessons that I've learned and then helping them through biblical guidance get out of the stress bubble so they come out on top and better than they ever were and better than I did. And so it's very important for me as I go into the stress bubble with these guys to be honest and vulnerable, because at the end of the day, we are all broken people who have made a lot of mistakes, and we've learned from them. We grow from them. We repent. We receive forgiveness and grace from God, but we move on. We push forward. And so my hope is to present an authentic, vulnerable life. And that would inspire men to, one, it's okay to fail. You won't be perfect, but we want you to get through that stress bubble being good enough to be a great parent who's a legacy leaver.
I love that. But I really do sense, I just want to push on this.
Yeah.
I really do sense that the common approach to manhood, I'm in the Reformed world, but beyond that, the conservative evangelical world is when you've heard this stereotype, Jim, when it's Mother's Day, you know, oh, the sainted mothers of this congregation, how we honor them. When it's Father's Day, buck up and get it right, you idiots. Hammer them. They're nails. And listen, I'm not here to soften everything about men. I actually believe in a lot of the traditional stuff, coaching my son in youth basketball. Like, hey, bro, you know, you got to get a rebound and you got to run hard and you didn't do that right. And so there's a lot of that in play. But also, I would argue this, Jim. I want to hear your response. I don't think it's quite right to say women are delicate flowers to be velvet gloved and men are nails to be hammered. Would you evaluate that second part for me?
So yeah, when it comes to, I think men are made to be the hammer. They're supposed to hammer for our society. As men go, so goes the culture. The problem is our men today are living in a world where they've become the nail. They're the news media nail. They're the Hollywood nail. Everywhere you go, you hear this oxymoronic phrase from ignorant academians, toxic masculinity. The masculinity in the dictionary is to the qualities and characteristics that make up a man. That's not toxic, but they're told that's toxic. And so what men do when men become the nail, they will either fight back or they will succumb. And we have become a culture now where the men have gone, you know what? I'm tired of getting hammered, and I'm just going to go into my man cave. I'm going to do my thing and kiss my butt, world. I mean, that's kind of what they're saying. And what they do is they creep into their man cave, but they creep back into male childish behaviors. And so our desire is to say, no, stop. You don't need to be the nail. You can step into the man that God has called you to be. One of my favorite quotes is by a guy named John Eldredge. He wrote a book 21 years ago. But in the book, he quotes a friend. And I love this quote. It's in my new book, Dialed In. Let the world feel the full weight of who I am and let them deal with it. And so I'm bringing the hammer of God, right? So.
Yeah, I would have a few disagreements with Eldridge, but I hear you on that wild nature, on that unapologetic nature of manhood.
Yes.
And today, a man can't get a tissue from the corner of the room in an HR meeting without apologizing for the way he walked through the room and everybody's feelings he hurt. There's a problem that I see, Jim, because on the one hand, you've got the left. I'm just going to use that shorthand. Absolutely blistering traditional manhood and 100%. Certainly biblical manhood, as you just called out. The woke culture we're in.
Yep.
One of its maybe the bullseye is the white male at the center of it. But men in general, forget skin color. Just men, straight men, especially
the oppressors.
They're literally oppressors. Okay,
yes,
equivalent
literally.
To slave owners in the past. Okay. So the problem that I see, one of the problems, is that you can actually kick back against that woke nonsense. And it really is nonsense. It's hot garbage.
I love what you're saying, brother.
Technical term, hot garbage. But you can...
I use a different word, the Greek word skubala. I won't tell you what that means in English.
Yeah, we'll leave that to you. But you can end up in the ditch on the other side, like you're talking about, with all these angry men. And bro, that's not good either, right?
No, and this is the problem. The problem is, first of all, men are not the oppressors. But I will say this. I do believe males are the source of 80 to 90% of the world's problems. But I will tell you this. Men are the solution. Men are the solution. Men are always the solution. And no matter what anybody tells us in the news, whatever the woke culture tells us, however a man goes, so goes the family, so goes the culture. When a man is absent, so you have two lesbian women raising children, those kids are going to come up disadvantageous because of that. When a woman raises her children as a single mother, those children have a higher risk of being felons, a higher risk of mental illness, a higher risk of not finishing their education. You know, we live in a world, you got me fired up, man. We live in a world of wokeness, and this wokeness is making men weak. I've never seen so many young men who have this disease of anxiety. I never knew it was a disease. Jesus never healed any from anxiety. But now we've got this diagnosis that there's this disease out there. I mean, I went to a conference with young teenagers speaking, and 5 of the pastors who spoke with me, I was on a panel of 5 or 6 pastors. 5 were women. I was the only man. All 5 of the women, and I'm not. I love strong women. Oh man. But they said that in order to be in ministry, you need to have a full-time counselor and be on medication against anxiety. Ooh. And I had to stand up in front of all these people and say, that's not true. I've been doing ministry 35 years. It's not true. But we've built this culture that says a weak man is right where we want him because we really don't need him. And it's just a lie from the pit of hell. And anybody I'm a free thinker. I'm a biblical thinker, but I mean, I believe that, you know, I've got a mind. I'm going to think. I'm going to think and make decisions on my own. And if I want to make an objective decision about masculinity, I have to come to the objective decision, not feelings, not subjective, that men are culture changers. In fact, in the Bible, God, whenever you're a reform guy, so you'll love this. Every time God decides to do a mighty work of the kingdom, almost every single time, he chooses a man.
Mm-hmm.
So how do we argue against that biblically? And how do we as pastors budget antithesis of that truth?
Mm-hmm.
God starts with men. So we need to start with men in our churches, in our culture. And the enemy has done is he started with men too, tearing them down. So that's where we are today.
Good analysis. Okay, so you've got the problem of weak men out there. I have reference to that in my book, The War on Men. Your new book that we're discussing, there it is, makes a cameo, Dialed In, addresses the same issue, and offers vital truth along those lines. So weak men are an issue. They have to be trained to lead, to step up. And before I go to the other side, you're exactly right. This is what I really like about your ministry. We've never met, but you put your finger on things that we're all seeing all around us.
Yeah.
Young men on meds, for example. I'm not saying no one should ever be on medication.
I'm not either.
Yeah, you're not saying that. But bro, we there's this new condition that doctors are treating. It's like failure to advance syndrome or something like this, where literally young men. I'm not ridiculing those who are going through this, because it is. You can laugh about secular therapy, but this is a real problem. These young men can't make decisions. They can't move forward in life. They're not growing up. And I think our woke culture has done a ton to create that situation. I think in some cases, broken families have created that. There's a complex mix of factors, but we've got to help these young men who are stalled out. And what I see in your approach, Jim, and I'll shut up, is that you bring truth, but you also bring love. Is that an accurate framing?
Yeah, we have to bring objective truth, but if we do that with no regard to who the message is being delivered to, we create more damage and more wreckage, right? So we have to bring truth with compassion, truth with empathy. We still need to bring truth. And listen, Hebrews 10:39, we can't shrink back from that. When I'm talking about abortion, I'm going to say that's, murder. I'm going to tell what it is, but we need to realize there are people hurting out there because they made that choice. When I talk about the homosexual lifestyle, I'm going to call it what it is, but I realize people are struggling and working through that. I mean, people who have given their life to Jesus, who struggle with that same sex attraction. What does it look like to glorify God, living a celibate lifestyle, right? And so, we need to have compassion in the midst of bringing the truth. And here's the hard part, Owen. We've been so gutless in a lot of our churches in America today about bringing the truth, that we almost have to bring a harder truth now. We have to, really say, this is the stance. People always joke, I was a parent who, from the 80s, right? So my kids were like, oh, these 80s parents, these guys that raised their kids through the 90s, you were so legalistic. Well, I think we're getting to the point now where we have to go back and go, listen, this is wrong, this is wrong, this is wrong. But we also need to set up systems and structures to bring healing and redemption, because at the end of the day, Jesus is about redemption, not condemnation, right? So we want to call it what it is, right? But we want to also have systems in place and methods in place to help people live victorious, redemptive lives.
Yeah, and there has to be that masculine voice. There does.
Absolutely.
It's not that we're always walking around barking orders like a commandant. That's not the case. Nope. But if you never use the command voice, so to speak, as the military calls it, or I guess probably historically called it, probably can't say that anymore. If you never use that, there's no order in a situation. For example, the home, or I'll go to youth basketball coaching. I can just tell how soft things are when you say directives. You give a directive to do, in the practice, and you say rebound, box out, these sorts of things. Or if it's football, tackle or hit somebody. in a positive way. And there's like no response. You have to say it 2, 3, 4, 5 times, and then you get the most tepid raising of the arms. That's not the case with every boy, but a lot of boys, a lot of young men have had that aggression taken out of them. And a lot of fathers and authority figures who are men think it is literally a bad thing to use a command voice. And so something's lost.
Well, it's really interesting. My book, Dialed In, that just released 4 days ago, I have a whole chapter on called The Protector. And quite frankly, I think it's the most controversial chapter in the whole book, because I lay out, hey, we are at times called to use force. And here's when we're called to do it. And I take the turn the other cheek discourse from Jesus, and I deconstruct what we've been taught in churches, and I share my personal opinion from Scripture. And it's definitely scholarly minority, but we're teaching in the church. Teddy Roosevelt, well, we named our ministry after a speech that he gave in 1910. He was a Sunday school teacher. He was 18 years old, attending Harvard University. He was in the Sunday school class. A young boy walked in with a black eye. And Teddy said, "Hey, what had happened?" And the kid said, "Well, a bully was picking on my daughter or my sister, so I jumped in to protect her, and he gave me a black eye." Billy Graham, Teddy Roosevelt gave the kid $1. When the Sunday school superintendent found out, he fired Teddy Roosevelt. And Teddy Roosevelt attended church all of his life, but never went back and taught Sunday school. And Teddy Roosevelt observed that men in the church are typically highly intellectual, but tepid and not willing and able to keep up with the rugged men of today. And that is part of the problem. And I think one of the underlying messages is, you're an oppressor. This is the woke message. You're an oppressor. So you need to completely relinquish any aggression, any violence, anything. And so what we've done is we've created this culture where everybody's trying to please everybody else and really scared about how everybody else feels. But God has wired men to be protectors. And if you watch the news, Owen, I challenge you, whenever there's a tragedy, hurricane, tornado, watch the news, just watch the news. Who are the people rescuing out there? It's 100% men. Does that mean women are cowards? No, it just means men are wired to do that. I mean, that's what men thrive for. So to tell a man he's not a protector is to emasculate him. It's to castrate him. It's to kick him between the legs. It's just not how God wired us.
No, it's absolutely not. And that's why, your 5-year-old boy comes up to you and his bicep is, a dime thick, a dime around, not a whole lot of muscle mass on there. But, he says, "Dad, am I strong?" Mm-hmm. And what do you say? "No, son, you are as flabby and as weak as almost a human being could be." No, you say, "No, but yeah, you're getting strong, man." Mm-hmm. So when I leave on a trip, I don't have this all figured out perfectly how to raise boys to men. But when I leave on a trip, I say to my son, speaking or something, "You're the protector of the family. Mm-hmm. You protect the girls." And, if an adult man breaks into the house, the odds at this time in history aren't great, in terms of that fight. But hey, I'm trying to create that category and that expectation. A lot of young men, though, have had the opposite. They've had that taken out of them, that extracted from them. And it's just disastrous when that happens.
Well, and we may never face the physical bully in this day and age, but we sure face the cyber bully. We just need to be ready to. Here's the deal. It's really funny. When Jesus did the turn the cheek discourse, he used the personal pronoun you or your 11 times. He never, ever talked about that other person, because in Jewish tradition, you did not have to tell a Jewish guy to protect or defend. Those are some angry, warring people, man. I mean, they've got a history of being in war. They still have that history. You didn't have to tell them. It was implied. If the weak or powerless are getting persecuted, you're going in, baby. You're going all in. So he didn't have to do that because it was so woven into their culture. But in our culture, we have to tell these guys again, hey, walk on the street side of the street when your mom is walking or when your wife is walking so you protect her. When you're in a restaurant, sit with your face to the door so you can protect her. Everywhere you go. In fact, there's a school below my office, about 60 kids in the charter school, and they just started school. There's a bunch of new kids, and I'm a big guy, man. I'm a big guy, and I walk down the stairs, and all the kids go, "Ah!" And the teacher says, "This is Mr. Jim. He looks big and scary, but he's a protector." And I said to them, I said, you know what, kids, I am. And if anybody ever comes here who's dangerous, I'm taking them out. And they're like, yay, Mr. Jim. But whenever a man walks into the room, the world around him should feel safer. But that's just not the case today when we have 48%, according to U.S. Census Bureau, 48% of kids are not expected to live with their dad through age 18. So who's there protecting them?
There literally is no protector around, and that's so key to manhood and womanhood alike. It's not supposed to be a set of didactic lectures, for 10 hours a day to kids. There's a lot to principially pass on, but it's supposed to be lived out. You talked about ancient Israel or modern Israel. I mean, you think about that tradition, for example, what's in that background? Think about the mighty men. One dude killed 800 men at one time. Another descended into a pit and killed a wild animal. David himself caught a lion by its mane and slit its throat. I mean, these are absolute warriors.
Yeah.
Today, we struggle in our sanitized suburban life. And I'm broadcasting from the burbs, baby. So no shade there. But we struggle to know how to fit warrior ideology, warrior mentality into spreadsheets and Zoom calls and walking around the neighborhood for a 10-minute stretch break. We're frankly not descending into pits in the backyard to kill. What are we going to kill? Squirrels? So it's hard to help men, especially in a society that does not like red-blooded men. It's hard to help men channel the biblical warrior instinct. The New Testament, of course, doesn't have Jesus slaughtering people left and right in his first coming. That's not the mission he hands off to us.
Yeah.
But we have to see ourselves, I would argue, I want to hear from you. We have to see ourselves as a spiritual warrior for God's glory. Agree? Hey, let me jump out of this discussion for just a second and inform you of something that's pretty important for you to consider. Economists are warning us about massive tax hikes that could hit your IRA and your 401k hard. It's hard to say these words, isn't it? With inflation rising and global uncertainty, it's no wonder central banks and many Americans are turning to gold. Proverbs 21:20 reminds us to preserve what we've built. If you haven't considered gold yet, now's the time. Reach out to Priority Gold to see how they can help you diversify with physical gold and silver. Text GOLDEN to 800-405-GOLD for a free gold info guide and see if you qualify for free shipping and storage. Don't wait. Get your portfolio working for you while the market is golden. Text GOLDEN to 800-405-GOLD to learn more. That's text GOLDEN to 800-405-GOLD. Now let's jump back into our conversation.
Yeah, and here's the deal. There's a Spartan saying that he who sweats in practice bleeds less in battle. And so here's the deal in our lukewarm, opulent, comfortable, heated steering wheel society. This is critical. Whether you are a spiritual warrior or a physical, you have to do hard things, and you have to. I have 6 health phrases for this year. One of them is suffering is an emotion. Like, I need to put myself in my suburban, easy, comfortable chair. I need to put myself into a situation of suffering 4 to 5 days a week. I need to suffer. I need to sweat. I need to pant. I need to hurt. And so if I'm a manual labor person, I'm out there digging holes and stuff. Hey, God bless you. You're already there. But for us soft pencil pushers, we need to do things to challenge us spiritually. We're that hardcore blue collar guy who's out there digging ditches. Bro, start reading a book. Challenge yourself intellectually. We have to find the area where we are weak, and we have to suffer in that area, because the only way a man, woman, child, anything gets strong is through resistance. And we have to create resistance. But what we've done in our culture, man, and we've done in the church too, our donuts in the foyer. I mean, come on. We have said comfort is king. And I will argue that comfort is the enemy. And I will argue this: the church never grew out of comfort. The church grew out of persecution. So we also have this mentality that says, I don't make this legal, make this legal, make this legal. And I think that's hurt us. When Constantine, the Roman emperor, made Christianity the state religion, it ruined Christianity. But while they were being persecuted, the church grew. In fact, Tertullian said the blood of the saints is the seed of the church. So what we've done is we've said, oh, we want to be a warrior, but I'm not willing to do anything to be that guy. And we're weak and soft. And we may be when I'm involved with church guys. So I'm a strong athletic guy, and I'm emotional. So I've had to challenge myself to read 40 to 50 books a year to build my intellect, right? To make that strong.
Yep.
But what has happened in the church is most church guys I run into are soft pansies, and they need to focus on the strength part of it. They're great intellectually. They can argue their way out of anything, but they're weak. And so we need to build resistance in those areas. In fact, I've got a chapter called The Disciplined Man, and that's what we're talking about. It says, it's called The Disciplined Man, Make Decisions Against Yourself. We have to pick those areas and make decisions against ourselves.
I love that. We're in a plastic world.
Yeah.
Everything's plastic. We're on screens all the time. We got devices that are plastic. We're driving plastic cars. Young men, porn. It's a plastic experience. It's what I mean by plastic is broadly artificial. It's artificial. It's you're on video games for 9 hours a day. It's pretend, it's not that it's a sin to play a video game, but I mean, it's even sports, it's on TV. It's, I think that's healthier than some other recreational pursuits.
100%.
At least somebody's suffering. But anyway, it's plastic. And here's a challenge I have. And I literally want to put you on the spot and extract some wisdom from you right now.
100%. Yeah, let's do it.
Part of what was used for boys to usher them into manhood in past generations was hard physical labor. That's part of how that protective instinct, that work hard instinct, that disciplined instinct came down the line, right? You didn't have to give again lectures about these things. You pointed to the field to your boy and said, go and come back at 6 p.m. Things that would be inconceivable today. If the kid is gone for 27 minutes, we're calling the FBI. Okay. So with that ecosystem lost, at least in a lot of places, not everywhere in America, there's still farms and stuff. But let's go back to the burbs. We seem to be on the burbs today. Where are you, by the way?
I'm in McMinnville, Oregon, about an hour and a half south of Portland, very much not Portland, but we're in a farm community. More grass seed is grown here than any place in the world. So it is a farm community, about 35,000 people, not a suburb, small city. I'd say small city.
Okay. Well, whatever the precise context, that ecosystem has been lost, at least in some places, right?
Here too.
How do I, as a dad of a young teenage boy, how do I get him to walk the traditional paths in which he works really hard for longer than 11 minutes? What do I do?
Yeah, I'll tell you what we did. How about that? I feel like we did this right. So all of our kids were mandated to play sports. And if they didn't play a sport, they were mandated to do something to keep them active during that season. So for 3 sports seasons during the school year, our kids were public school kids. We mandated sports, okay? And if they didn't play a sport, one of my sons got cut for the basketball team, so we made him. He was the manager of the basketball team. Now, here's the other critical thing, and this is where parents, I don't get this. It's a head scratcher to me. Our kids were given reliable used cars by their grandparents when they were 16 years old. One of the cars we helped our youngest son purchase. As soon as that event happened, these are old cars, 150,000, 200,000 miles. I said to my kids, okay, go get a job. What? I go, well, yeah, go get it. Yeah, who's going to pay for all this stuff? So we made them work. And this argument that parents have that they say, well, your job is to go to school and get good grades. That's garbage. That's not your job. That's your education. Get to work. If you want a cell phone, get to work. This is what parents aren't doing today. I don't understand. If you have a cell phone, get a job. And you can pay the $40 a month. If you have a car, pay for the insurance and gas. My kids say, Dad, I'm so upset that I wish we had more money so we didn't have to do that. And I said, oh, boys, whoa, wait. You understand that this has nothing to do with money. In fact, my kids, Father's Day 2 years ago, my kids are 30, 28, and 26. They're all boys. They said, Dad, we just want to thank you on Father's Day for making us do the things you made us do. We thought you were the meanest dad in the world, but all of our friends are soft and don't have a life, and thank you for that. Here's the thing, Owen. We have to put our kids in challenging situations that they may, I don't know if I can say this on the air, fail. We have to let them fail and cause them to work. We had chores when our kids were growing up, and we rotated 3 different chores throughout the week. And we told our kids, this is the rent you pay to live here. What? Yeah, you do this to live here because nobody lives here for free. And so just training them to work, to enjoy the work, to earn what they obtain. These are things that help us, create kids that become adults who aren't entitled, spoiled little children who want a working wage when they're 22, a living wage when they're 22.
Bro, that was some heat.
That's my rant.
That was some heat. No, that's it. That's work. Work is literally just about the first word associated with Adam in the Garden of Eden, as you well know. Genesis 2:15. Man put him in the garden to work and keep, or it's translated different things.
But that's not the curse. That was not the curse.
It's not the curse.
That was the purpose and the passion.
That's it.
Yes.
So my dad did a form of what you talked about. And these are the old ways that somehow just, they're gone now. I don't know who canceled them. Not everywhere, farming communities, but in a lot of places, in a lot of cities and stuff. They're honestly, I'm not taking shots at modern parents either, including Christian parents. Where do you live in a, 1.5 million person city? Not talking about 7-Eleven or Chick-fil-A. Where do you send a boy into a field? You can't send him into a field. But my dad sent me into a blueberry field in Maine. I'm from Maine. And that same thing you talked about, that marked my mind and my spirit for the rest of my life. I saw terrible things in the form of 11-hour workdays with no one coming to get me. It was amazing for me. So I just, we got to wrap up here, but I think what you said is so helpful. I think we can adjust things a little bit. We're not in an agrarian society dominantly, but find a job somewhere and work hard. And that's actually what I hear you saying is that's a crucial part of actually Christian discipleship.
Absolutely. Yeah. And, my kids all worked in the agricultural industry for a season. And if you live anywhere near landscapers, or everybody has a landscaper, get them doing manual labor. I mean, every kid should do that for at least a year to learn what it's like to sweat and to get calluses and to hurt. So 100%.
Any last word you want to give about Dialed In? We've been talking about these themes. I said to you before the podcast kicked off, I think you and I could probably do a podcast together about this. I'm not trying to sign you up for that. You got plenty in your life. But any final exhortation, word, reflection you want to give my audience?
Yeah. In my book, Dialed In, I take the 20 qualifications of a spiritual leader outlined by Paul to Titus and Timothy. And we take the original Greek, we turn it into one positive word. And so the cool part about this book is it is a recipe for a man to walk in biblical masculinity according to God's design, not man's design, because God has called men to change their culture, to change their family, to change their world. And he's given us a roadmap in the pastoral epistles for men to do that. And so the goal of every man listening, no matter where you are in life or where you are in your spiritual journey, it really should be to be a man that is biblically qualified to lead, whether or not God ever calls you to that or whether or not church leadership ever calls you to that. That should be our goal. And so I would say, pick up my book and go through it, see where you're weak and see where you're strong, and take those weak areas like we talked about earlier and start forming a resistance training program so that you can become stronger. Each chapter has 10 assessing questions. A guy can assess which ones he's strong and weak in against the other 19 and press into it and become his best version of a man.
I love that. And I want to co-sign that and push anybody watching or listening towards Dialed In, this book. And I just want to say, don't approach this as if you are functionally perfect. Don't approach this as if you've got it all, as if you're supposed to have it all figured out. What Jim talked about with the stress bubble of 25 to 55, your age, that's real. And that's when God, in my own life, and I think in a lot of lives, especially in sort of that middle period, exposes you. You look back and all of a sudden you go, especially in our achievement-oriented society, wait a minute. I haven't got a gold star in every category. I messed that up and that up and that up, and this pattern is not great, and that's a little wonky, and I haven't done that, and I should do that. You've got these things start to pile up, and you're not the gold star achiever of age 20. But I would just say that's actually how it's supposed to go. You're not Jesus. You're not going to be perfect. 100%. Do not fall prey to this lie of we just talk about the ideal as Christian men and we never really fall short of that. And if anybody falls short of that, sick the police on. No. Bro, chill. The
100%.
the Bible is full of men who genuinely follow God by God's grace, but who mess up, sin, get things wrong, get trapped in patterns, have to fall on their face and repent multiple times. And that's not just them, that's us. Jim, I kind of just crashed the train, but any last thought on that?
Oh, I was going to say you dropped the mic, brother. So I would just say this. I love one of my favorite verses in my life is Philippians 1:6. It says, I am confident of this very thing, that he who began a good work in you will carry it on to completion until the day of Christ Jesus our Lord. So what I want to tell you guys is this. You are not perfect. You are a broken, sinful dude, just like me, just like Owen. But listen, the good news is, guys, God is not done with you. He's going to carry it on to completion. Your job is to walk in obedience and do the best you can. Don't get discouraged. 2 steps forward and 1 step back. Guess what? Is progress. So hang in there, guys. You've got this.
Love it. My guest today has been Jim Ramos. He's the head of Men in the Arena, terrific manhood ministry. His new book is Dialed In. He's walking through biblical manhood. This isn't red pill stuff. We overlap, he and I, with some of the red pill stuff, no doubt. You hear some truth out there. You hear some practical wisdom. But that's not what men most need. Men most need biblical manhood to live out God's glory. So I'm thankful for my brother. Jim, thank you so much for your time today.
Again, it's an honor, and I'm humbled to be on your show, Owen. You're doing a great job, man. Thank you.
Thanks, bro. God bless you.